The Affordable Care Act. The Affordable Care Act is, since 2010, March of 2010, the product that the Obama administration embraced and gave to the American people as an example of excellent, modern, digital government, the Affordable Care Act. Today, within these last hours, although we've heard hints that this was going to happen, Robert Gibbs, the administration's spokesperson for the first 2 years of the Obama administration, when the Affordable Care Act was in train. Here it comes. Robert Gibbs is at the White House. And Ezra Klein, who writes for the Washington Post, blogs every 4 minutes, and also as much on MSNBC. Both these very careful policy partisans said bluntly to the partisans of the administration, they're not talking to the Republicans, they're not talking to independents, they're talking to good, progressive Democrats, listening to MSNBC, reading the Washington Post, that the Affordable Care Act, healthcare.gov website is a catastrophe and an embarrassment. Mr. Gibbs went in another step and said, this isn't about volume, this isn't about glitches, this is a catastrophe, and the timeline is short to fix it. Mr. Klein, and I read from his column, a lot of liberals will be angry over this post, said Mr. Klein. A lot of conservatives will be happy about it. But it's important to see the Affordable Care Act as something more than a pawn in the political wars. It's a real law that real people are desperately, nervously, urgently trying to access. So far, the Obama administration has failed them. Salena Zito, the Pittsburgh Tribune Review, Lara Brown of George Washington University, and Francis Rose of Federal News Radio join me because the Affordable Care Act is the story that matters. It is the story we'd be talking about and will continue to talk about these next years because it must work for the American people. That's the system that the Obama administration has committed itself to. There's no alternative. And what is going on in Washington right now is irrelevant to the discovery we have in front of us as to what's wrong with the Affordable Care Act. Why doesn't the user interface work? Why do we hear these stories that the insurers, the providers, can't connect to the middleware, the part that we can't see through the UI? Why is there anxiety about the databases written with old language on older computers? Francis, I'll begin with you because this is your work all the time, and you were very good to speak on my show last night. You guest hosted about the way government does things, the way government does digital. You have warned over these last weeks that the government rolls out digitally very badly. I didn't know what that very badly meant when you first gave it to me. It has an asterisk, like you've never seen anything this bad, John. How does government do procurement? How does government do contracting that explains this scale of catastrophe? Good evening to you, Francis.
Good evening, John. It's done somewhat differently than the private sector, and you mentioned the program last night. Michael Astrew, the former Social Security Administrator until the beginning of this year, was on the program with me, and he's been warning about this for a long time. He's been warning about it since before he was in government. You'll note that Social Security is one of the agencies in the federal government that is integral to the operation of healthcare.gov, and he's been warning particularly that the big problem here is healthcare.gov is this nice fancy new portal that is supposed to collect and combine and compile information from all across the federal government. Some of these systems have been around for decades. None of them are the same formats, none of them are the same languages, and none of them were ever written to talk to each other. And so the idea that you're just going to come in 3 or 3.5 years and put this together is a stretch. Then when you have Mr. Astrew saying that some of these things have only been really heavily worked on for the past year or so. So people who were in the meetings and on the calls like him are saying, I'm not surprised by this at all because this is just not the kind of timeline under which the federal government can execute an information technology project.
And that timeline is done. The ringer went off. It's done. We've got December 15th, March 15th, and all right, Salena. Your paper, and I will speak to your reporter later this week, but I'm asking now your help here. What I read in the Pittsburgh Tribune Review about violations of privacy by the Veterans Administration extant already. And this is part of the process of discovering if our government can be trusted with medical information. What did you learn, Salena?
Call Time was reporting that there have been 14,000 breaches of privacy alone within the Veterans Administration. That is only one part of government in dealing with their healthcare situation, with the different components of what they're dealing with.
You said 14,000, didn't you, Salena? 14,000. Yes, 14,000
in under 3 years. So that's just sort of a speck of making you understand the problem. And I think Francis made a really good point earlier, where he said that all these agencies online are not communicating with each other. Well, I mean, that's not a real big shock. If you look at how government interfaces with each other all the time, they never communicate with each other, and that's sort of that was a big beef with security in terms of the FBI and the CIA not sharing information. Last week, the Sebelius came to Pittsburgh. It was her first time to roll out in person a sign-up event for the Obamacare. And she came in very confidently. She held this big event at Heinz Field with the president of the Steelers, Dan Rooney, the former ambassador to Ireland and a big supporter of President Obama. And despite the fact of having trained workers there, despite the fact that she tried it herself, nobody was able to sign up at this event. It was a national embarrassment. So many people read the story that it literally crashed our website.
Kathleen Sebelius is the Secretary of Health and Human Services, and there are suggestions that she probably will be the person that has to explain or accept responsibility for the failure so far. Lara, the political scientist here, I cannot think offhand a scale failure like this, except maybe if you'll accept prohibition. But that took many years and wasn't about a website. The American people right now do not know the scale of the discovery, what we're discovering about the Obamacare. Later on tonight, I'll report about the security concerns, and they are numbing. They're numbing. We can't even get to the numbers that are coming in on the security concerns because the website doesn't work. When and if it works, there are major problems with it. But Lara, this failure for the Obama administration, are they acting as if they don't believe it? Are they in denial? Are they dumbfounded to the point that they can't come out of their rooms? What's going on, Lara?
Well, quite frankly, I think they're very happy that the Republicans have been so adamant about the budget and the deficit and the debt ceiling debate, because quite frankly, were all of that debate not going on right now, the media attention and the American people's focus would be a really failing Obamacare rollout. And what you would actually see is that the Republicans would probably gain a great deal of support for their desire to repeal this law because the glitches have been so bad.
However, the Republican Party, we can't be responsible for everyone wondering by, Lara, you know that the Affordable Care Act is going to be there long after we can't remember what the fight was about in October. The Obama administration is not getting out front of this. That's good politics, right? To come out and they're using the word glitches. I mean, Robert Gibbs bashed that aside tonight. What is your sense of what they're waiting for? That there's going to be some magic button that fixes this? Are they ignorant of how software works? You don't repair it in place. It's not done that way.
Well, I think what they're hoping and what they are looking toward is to stay under the radar screen as much as possible for the next few weeks, and they are hoping that they can work with the very many contractors and subcontractors to fix the problem.
In other words, Francis, did you hear that? They're going to do in 6 weeks what they couldn't do in 3 years. You got that, Francis?
It's not going to happen. I'm already hearing that there's talk about scrapping this and starting over, John.
And Salena, the Republican Party is not listening, but we are. This is a catastrophe for people who need health care. Salena, are you hearing that in Pittsburgh?
Absolutely. And, Sebelius was just sort of mortified on Friday, and she kept repeating the same line over and over again. We've had 13 million people visit. We've had 13 million people visit. There's just some glitches. And, people are frustrated. People were embarrassed. There were several people at the event, and there have been people that our reporters have been covering who have been trying since day one to sign up.
Salena Zito, the Pittsburgh Tribune Review, Francis Rose of Federal News Radio, Lara Brown of George Washington University. I'm John Batchelor.